0, 1.
Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Texas Narcos. Today, very excited to have Jim Petrucci from Street Level Policing all the way from Pennsylvania. Jim, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. So, before we get started, with all of our conversations, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, born and raised there. I've been a police officer. I started in 2015, worked for multiple different agencies. Started in actually 2 small towns, and then I moved on. I worked in Baltimore City, Maryland for about a year.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely, a different way of policing there.
Yeah, that's hopping.
Yeah, it's when I started there, I told them the agencies I had worked for, like other guys, and they're like, "Did you carry a wooden gun there?" Or, you know what I mean?
Nice.
I'm like, "No, I already know how to be a cop," and then
Right.
I didn't though. So
yeah, I've had I've known some people from Baltimore. One of the people I knew actually worked with the people from the We Own the. What is it? We Own the Night or We Own the City?
we own the city.
Yeah. So that the crew that was on that TV show, the guy that I know, he worked with those guys.
Oh, okay.
Not like on the same unit, but like he worked at, and he was like, "Dude, this place is crazy."
Yeah. It was a different world.
Yeah.
But I was happy to get that experience there.
Yeah.
It was
for sure.
was amazing.
And then you ended up in Scranton, you said?
Yeah. So I work in an agency. It's basically a city in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how'd you like the weather here when you got off the airplane? It was like freaking 90 degrees, right?
Yeah, it was nice. I think it was like mid-30s this morning before we left.
Yeah.
And we were all bundled up to get on the plane. And then as soon as we walked out the doors when we arrived in Austin, it was like a different world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. All my people are at the river right now going swimming because it's the end of October. What else do you do in Texas? You go to the river, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but well, cool. So, what made you want to get into being a cop in the first place?
So my brother's a police officer.
Okay.
He's about 10 years older than me, maybe 12 years older than me.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, he became a cop. And kind of near my senior year of high school, he would talk to me a lot about it. And then I went on a ride along with him. After the ride along, I was sold. And he was like, still to this day, he's a proactive police officer, very passionate about it. And I knew that was for me.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really don't have it in my family.
Yeah.
But it was eye-opening to go on the ride along. And I actually went on several ride-alongs.
Yeah.
Then I joined the police academy.
Yeah.
And continued to go on ride-alongs with them. I think it was like Friday nights.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was your thing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And he would have. I remember every now and then they would stop for coffee, and it'd be like a coffee break or whatever it may be. And someone had walked up to him actually while we were standing outside, like drinking coffee with the other guys on his shift.
Yeah.
And walked up to him and said, "Thank you." And he's like, "Well, for what?" He didn't recognize the person.
Yeah.
And the person's like, "You saved my life." And then went on to, it turns out he had arrested that person for drugs, and that person was clean. And that's when it really hit me. I'm like, I can make a difference here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. Is your brother up in the Northeast as well?
Yes, he is. He's in a smaller department outside of the area I work. Actually, I started in his department.
Okay.
Yeah, I started young. So, my senior year, I was going on ride-alongs. I went right to the academy outside of as soon as I graduated high school.
Oh,
so I graduated the academy when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was tough to find a job. No one wants to hire a kid.
Yeah.
But it turns out I really only got part-time jobs in places where I knew people.
Yeah.
I think I applied to every police department in my county because at the time, so you're talking 2015, full-time police jobs were hard to find.
Right.
Really hard to find. So I would just apply for part-time positions most guys would work, like you'd come across guys who had 4 part-time jobs,
Wow.
to make ends meet. But so I applied to every police department in my county. I think it was like something like 15 or 16, and I got hired at 2 of them part-time where, my brother worked at one and my best friends worked at another.
That's interesting that you can work at 2 different agencies part-time.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. I was trying to get a third at one point because
Wow.
even when you're part-time, like you didn't get out. It wasn't like, all right, you're part-time, you get 32 hours a week here. I was
Right.
working. Most of my shifts were like call-offs. Like, hey, we just had somebody call off. Can you come in and fill
Wow.
in? And
Wow.
I was 19. Like, yeah, I'll be right there. It didn't matter what I was doing. I dropped what I was doing, went in.
That's interesting because, see, in Texas, you can't even become a cop until you're 21.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
That's another reason. So a lot of departments will actually have their own policy where you can't work for them until you're 21.
Right.
That's their own rule, but not a state rule.
Right.
And then, but that was part of my issue. They're like, you're 19, you just graduated high school. I don't know if we're ready for you yet.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't even buy your own gun.
Yeah, exactly. So my father had to buy me my gun, which was legal.
Yeah.
And, but because of Leosa, I was allowed to carry it.
Right.
As long as I had a police job.
Wow.
You know what I
That's
mean?
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, so I started when I was 21. I started the academy when I was 21. And I had been in like police explorers, as a kid,
Okay.
doing all that stuff. And then I worked in a jail for a little while. And then, and then the job I had right before I went to the academy, I was a security officer, armed security. It just couldn't wait to turn 21, that way to go to the academy, right?
Right.
So I turned 21 in August, and then I started the academy in October the 1st of 2007. So, yeah, like I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Hell, if I would have known I could have gone to Pennsylvania and gotten a cop job at, 18, 19 years old, I probably would have went up there,
Yeah, except you were getting paid like, I think it was like $15.50 an hour at the one place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think when I started at the agency I'm at now, when I started there in 2007, they hired me and they paid for my academy and they let me work in the jail for until I was certified, right?
Okay.
So I worked in the jail Monday through Thursday. I was off on Fridays, and then I went to the academy on Saturdays and Sundays. That took a whole year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it was basically part-time, like academy. But
Yeah, the academy was on the weekends, and then I worked in the jail, all week. And so the only day I had off was on a Friday. And so, and I think I want to say I made $13 an hour when I first started.
That's crazy, isn't it, man?
Like as a jailer. And then, I spent a year there, and then I graduated the academy at the end of September of 2008, and then started on the streets October 1st.
That's awesome.
But it's,
That's how you know it's not about the money. You know what I mean? You weren't like, yeah, I'm going to go make $13 an hour. Like,
at the time, the job that I left, I was making $13 an hour. So, I was making the same money.
Yeah, right.
Like it was, it was a good job, that was, that was a lot of money. I was used to, as a kid, you make $10 an hour, when you're in high school or something,
right.
Or, $8 an hour. I mean, I don't know. It's just a different world,
100%.
But that's cool. So, what the job that you do at your current agency, why don't you talk about, what type of work do you do at that agency?
Yeah. So when I first started with my agency, I did about 1.5 years in patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was assigned to an undercover narcotics unit.
Okay.
I did a little bit over a year there and then transferred to the street crimes unit, which I've been in, I think it'll be 4 years completed next month, actually.
Okay.
In that unit, I'll tell you what, it's been a blast. We have so much fun at work, but we also do a lot of good work. So we're mainly assigned to conduct proactive investigations, whether it's narcotic related, firearm related, gang activity, fugitive apprehension.
Mm-hmm.
We also, every now and then, we will get assigned cases. Like if someone goes to the store, lies on the phone to buy a gun, we get assigned those cases.
Okay.
So pretty much anything gun related. And like when we have a homicide, we assist on those, from what we can.
Right.
On, from the street end of it.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. So it sounds like a lot of fun. Jumping out on people, and it's very proactive unit. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's a blast. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Right.
People have said to me like, "Oh, at some point you're not gonna want to do this anymore," and I just don't believe them.
Yeah.
I don't believe them because I know there's one guy I work with who's been doing it for about 16 years.
Yeah.
He's a little older, and he's not stopping. So I don't, what I mean? Everyone's like, "You're gonna hang it up at some point."
Yeah.
I don't think so. I yet to be seen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So.
So how did you get into teaching?
So what happened was when we would have a new hire
Okay.
at my agency, we were basically told to sit down with each new hire and kind of run them through a crash course on what we do, just so they knew when they came in the police department, they knew exactly what each unit had done, and also to provide them some sort of guidance in a sense.
All right.
So we started doing that, and on top of that, the guy, my partner at the time, we were going to a lot of training, and we would pretty much debrief every arrest we had. I mean, it didn't matter how small it was. Small to large. Like, we were like, "Oh, did you see that guy do this? Like, did you see how he acted when we asked him this?" And, we would go back and forth about reading case law, because if you want to know how to do your job, you gotta know what you can and can't do. That's one of the most important things. So then I had, one of the things we do a lot is we do pedestrian stops and bicycle stops.
Okay.
I had come to the realization that cops weren't really doing them.
Right.
So, of course, it occurs, but even for the first couple of years of my career, like, I'm like, "Oh, they're not in a car. Nothing we can do. I can only do a mere encounter,"
Right.
And I realized that how fruitful they could be, but also how uncomfortable they were for officers. Even like an experienced proactive officer I worked with, he was even uncomfortable with them. And I'm like, but like, this is where people are hiding, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? We got to do this. So in a nutshell, I realized that we did so many of them that maybe I could teach other cops how to successfully do them also.
Right.
But also kind of do, everything I do on a daily basis, like everything my team does. I thought that maybe I had something to offer. So I started putting together a course, which is now it's called Street Level Policing. And with the intent of, if I can just help one person become a little bit better,
Right.
not only am I engaging in the crime fight, but I'm helping someone else.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm like, all right, we come to work, we work hard, we like to think we're making a difference.
Right.
And what if I can pass that along and help another cop, make another quality arrest? It's like, you know what I mean? You talk about, one team, one fight,
Right.
expanding the whole thing. So
That's awesome. So the class that you've developed, where can people go online to find information about it?
So they can go to dynamicpolicetraining.com.
Okay.
Also, I have law enforcement only Instagram page. It's just Jim Petrucci
Okay.
on Instagram. Same with my Facebook. And then Dynamic Police Training, which I teach under Dynamic. I teach my course for Dynamic Police Training.
Okay.
They have a private Facebook group,
Right.
law enforcement only, where you have to, verify yourself, which a lot of good information's in. But you'll see all street level policing stuff within that group. So definitely, I would suggest anybody who is a police officer that has any interest in, becoming better than they were yesterday,
Right.
they should join these groups.
Okay. So talk to us about, what is somebody going to expect to see whenever or what's the kind of stuff that officers going to learn coming to your class?
So my class pretty much hits on, I don't want to say everything street level, but so here's how it will go. The first segment, we're going to talk about pedestrians and bicycle stops and how important they are.
Right.
Because like I said, that's where people are hiding. People don't consider the fact, even cops, that don't consider the fact that all the stuff we get in cars, whether it's drugs, firearms, wanted people, all those people at some point have to walk to that car.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time, you responded to a 911 call and the suspect parked the block down the road and walked up and committed their crime.
Right.
Arrived on foot, fled on foot. You know what I mean? We're missing those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about that, and then I talk about behavior changes to look for based on reaction to police presence. You know, not based on race, color, creed, religion, but reaction to police presence. And I have all my own videos that show these people acting this way, or maybe even a cluster of behavior, and then the body cam video of me or my team conducting the stop and what comes of that.
Right.
So I'll get into that in the first segment, and then we move on to how to make those stops. So we talk about pedestrian laws in whatever county or state you work in, because a lot of people don't know the pedestrian laws. Like everyone knows that you can't have a taillight out.
Right.
You know what I mean? But they don't know that you can't just walk in front of traffic.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Everyone thinks it's like the car's fault.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, cars have to yield.
Yeah.
So I'll dive into those because we can use them to our advantage as far as enforcing pedestrian laws and using laws to stop crime.
Right.
And so I'll get into that. I'll talk about communication on how to make these stops. And like I said, everything's backed up by body cam footage. I won't talk about anything that I don't have a body cam video to show you,
right,
or dash cam.
Right.
And then I move on to, how to successfully conduct those stops, how to communicate properly, things to look for when you're asking me certain questions, behavior changes. And then I talk about, one of the big things is high crime areas.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people think high crime areas, they think, well, I don't work in Austin, or I don't work in, Philadelphia. So like, I don't have a high crime area. But the reality is, no matter where you work, you do have an area, whether it's an apartment building or something of that sort, that is worse than others, not based on what you think or the people you see there, but based on
stats, probably.
Yeah, exactly, statistics. Yeah. It's pretty easy to figure out. So I kind of hammer that home, and then I talk about some case law to back up what being in a high crime area in general could mean for your investigation.
Right.
So I'll get into that, and then I really hit home on the use of social media.
Yeah.
So it's like we're going from pedestrian stops to pedestrian bicycle stops, all the way to the use of social media just for intelligence gathering.
Yeah, that's a big. We talked about this offline about you get a fake Facebook page, and you post something up there like, hey, what's good, looking for work. Next thing you know, you got people hitting you up wanting to do drug deals with you, and it just goes from there. It's like, wow, off social media.
Right. And it's amazing the cases we've made off social media. My team and I are, I don't know how, they're incredible. Yeah. I actually, you'd be shocked. And now, what you said, we talked offline, so you wouldn't be shocked because you've done a lot of cases. But if you're in this day and age, if you're a police officer, and so like in my class, I won't talk about necessarily how to hit up a drug dealer or things of that sort, because I'm dealing with a lot of, like, whether you're a cop for a year, 6 months, or 20 years, you're going to get something out of this class. But at the same time, a lot of times I'm dealing with patrol officers who aren't in a position where they can set up an undercover deal, do a rip or something like that. But the biggest thing is, whenever there's like a serious crime committed, everyone comes to us and they're like, hey, what do you see on social media? What do you see on social media? Yeah. And most of the time we're getting on there is admissions. Yeah. Or like, think about this. Like, you go to a domestic and they're like, I don't know his real name, or I'm sorry, take the domestic part out. You go to a call where a crime was committed and they're like, I don't know his real name, but this is his Facebook name. That happens all the time on a daily basis. Or this is his Instagram, or this is what he posted on Snapchat. Yeah. And we're like, because when you're a cop, like when I first started, they're like, delete all your social media. You don't want to have any social media as a police officer. Yeah. So I step back, just like everyone does, because you're like, all right, yeah, like anything you put out there stays there. That's how cops are getting in trouble, saying stupid things on social media. And then I figured out that really investigatively, like, you need to dive in. You have to, because simply of the crimes that were going on through the use of, whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, and going undetected. Right. So I'll talk about that just simply as a intel gathering thing. Like, you may see, all right, this individual here, they're posting a firearm for sale, or maybe just in possession of a firearm. And they're not allowed to legally have one.
Right.
And now here you are a month later and you see that person, in a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to take a second look? Yeah. You know what I mean? 'Cause and that's when that's when I get into intelligence-based policing.
Yeah.
How many times are we getting, whether it's intelligence from social media, but also think about this, and it's huge, is like I'll get information from people who are going to 911 calls all the time.
Yeah.
Because they'll go to a call and, the domestic partner they're involved with, they'll be like, oh, by the way, they do this and this and this while they're angry.
Yeah.
Right. Or while they're leaving that call, a neighbor stops them. Hey, by the way, I believe they're selling drugs out of this house or that house. So that's passed along to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what do we do with that information? And it's like, that could be maybe the start of your investigation. And I know, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The start of your investigation. Or it could be great intelligence to have a week down the road, a month down the road, when maybe you come in contact with this person coincidentally.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know that's true. I know in the place I work, I worked there for a long time and I know pretty much everybody. But being able to just say, oh, I'm going to go check their Facebook. I'm going to see what they're up to. Oh, they posted a gun last week, then holding a gun and a stack of cash. Oh, okay. And then I see him tonight on the highway or on the street. I'm like, hey, let's see if he's got a gun and a stack of cash on him. Let's go have a talk. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your violation. Whether it's a mere encounter or a stop. It's like, if you're not doing that, you're missing out big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. I used to all the time, I would go into the high crime areas, and in Texas, the offense is, I think the title of the offense is use of sidewalk. So you're required to walk. If there's not a sidewalk present, you have to walk against traffic.
Right.
Like coming into traffic, right?
Correct, yeah.
If there's a sidewalk, then you have to be on the sidewalk, right? So we'd be riding around and we'd see a guy walking down the street in the middle of the night, high crime area. There's not a sidewalk and he's walking the same direction we're driving. We're like, hey, let's stop and have a conversation. Hey, man, what's up? Next thing you know, we got dope, and he's like, hey, I don't want to go to jail. Well, now we have something in common. I don't want you to have to go to jail. Why don't you tell me about this crack in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
So, or, a guy on a bicycle, they're required to have a headlight at night. They're required to do, all that stuff. I don't know how many times I've stopped people on bicycles. I'm like, hey, man, stopped you for running that stop sign back there. He's like, I don't have to stop at a stop sign. I said, yeah, you do. No, I'm on a bicycle. I'm like, you have to obey this. Oh, man. People think that if they're on a bicycle, they're not going to get pulled over, right? They think they can, there was an instance a while back where they were actually using dudes on bikes with backpacks to run dope in between stash houses, like in the city, right?
Yeah.
Because they knew, like, the cops are watching the house, or if they think the cops are watching the house, they're going to stop a car, but they're not going to stop a dude on a bike. But
right.
So.
That's huge, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is what we're missing.
Yeah.
So when you talk about some of the Texas pedestrian laws and bicycle laws, what I've found so far from teaching in several states is that they're basically universal.
Right.
It's the same way in every state for the most part. That you have to, if there's a sidewalk available and it's practical to use, you need to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And same as when you're walking on the road, you need to walk towards traffic.
Yeah.
Basically. So, and same with, if you're on a bike, you need to by the same laws as a vehicle.
Yeah.
They don't know that. And when you come into contact with these individuals, they say things exactly like what you're saying. Well, that can't be true. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And the whole, we just had recently, an individual was going out to a source city of ours on a bus and then walking the dope through town in a backpack. It's kind of just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And they think they're safe in a sense of, I'll tell you what, my oldest warrants, and when I say oldest warrants, I mean people we come into contact with that are wanted individuals.
Right.
And they've been wanted for 2, 3, even up to 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. On the run for 5 years.
Yeah.
Those ones are always people on foot or on a bike.
Mm.
I just had a couple months ago, we had a guy walk through a pedestrian control signal, displayed several behavior changes once he observed us. And he actually had a fake ID,
Mm-hmm.
fake social, everything like that, which
Wow.
luckily we were on our toes enough to be able to figure out that it was bogus.
Yeah.
And he had a warrant for 5 years. He had a job and everything.
Wow.
5 years he was wanted. Same on the bike thing. And I asked, actually, the guy who was wanted for 5 years, I said, how have you gone this long? Like, when's the last time you were stopped by the police? And he's like, he wasn't like he said, oh, I've been stopped every day and got away.
Yeah.
He's like, I was stopped 2 other times, and both were in cars. He's like, so I don't get in cars.
Right.
He's like, I'll take public transportation because no one's really stopped in public, you know, or I'm walking. And never once was I stopped for walking. He's like, so it's been pretty easy. Just don't get into vehicles.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he just had, you know, part of the things we do, one of the things we do is we do utilize informants for information and things of that.
Yeah.
It was just recently where we had a phone call with a wanted individual that was recorded.
Yeah.
Informant to a wanted individual. And the individual told the informant on the recorded call, you know, listen, I'm not getting into any cars. I'm wanted.
Yeah.
He's like, I walk everywhere. You know, so that's the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So since I've been, especially in my area, since I've been pushing out, like, hey, stop ignoring people on bikes, people on foot.
Yeah.
It's becoming more prevalent. So, like, we're coming in contact with people, and they're like, I was just stopped 2 weeks ago for the same thing. Or like, well, it wasn't us. That means, like, people out here doing it. You know? So to keep pressure on the criminal element, and again, that's not saying every pedestrian, you know, is involved in criminal activity. Of course not. Just like people in a vehicle. Yeah. But for us to be able to keep the pressure on, and for people to be scared that they may get caught is, you know, one of the goals. Yeah. You know, so it's incredible.
So it sounds like this class is, you know, people like to go to these interdiction classes because they want to learn, you know, like if I'm sitting on the interstate and I see a car and it does X, Y, and Z, gives me these kind of behaviors, these things, that's a car that I want to go after. It sounds like this is kind of the same thing, but for people on bikes and on foot.
Correct. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Like I'll have specific behaviors, you know, there where I'll talk about like, all right, this is what this individual did. And then when we turned around, they did this. All right. And then they committed their violation and we came into contact with them. Right. And this is what they had. You know what I mean? Or this is the crime they were committing, you know, other than their actual original violation. Yeah. And one of my biggest things is like, I don't ever want to be one of those guys who goes up there and says, if this person does this, this means they're, you know, they have a felony amount of drugs in their pocket. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. I always want to be able to show exactly what I want to be able to basically put my money where my mouth is. Right. And that's why the body cam to me is huge and people love it. Yeah. And I even have like some debrief videos, very short, like, hey, listen, why did you act that way? Like, why did you turn around and walk the opposite direction once you saw us? Right. He's like, well, because I had a warrant, I was scared. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, not everyone will just come clean like that and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know? Yeah. But several people have been completely honest. And I'll even have that portion of the debrief in the, you know, at the end of the video. Right.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. Join us next week as we come back for part 2 of our episode with Jim Petrucci. Until next time, we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, share our podcast with your friends and family. You can find Texas Narcos Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Your continued support helps us to bring you stories like the one you just heard. Thank you. God bless, and we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos.